22,000 acres. That far mountain range, not this near spine, but the far mountain range is the outer limit.
You're kidding.
I mean, that is how large this place is.
The far, not the near ground mountains.
That's correct. The one that's about 6 miles to our front.
Wow.
22,000 acres. And in Afghanistan, this is really, truly the largest and the most deliberate formal training locations.
What was this location before it was this?
It has always been, in compliments of previous occupiers. I think they kind of developed. I mean, I think they built some of these buildings right there. The general said that
back in our day. I can't comment on that, but
certainly the Soviets left their mark here.
Well, they did, and you can see a number of different vehicles here. And what's really interesting is that the general is an armor officer, and he remembers when he was a cadet attending school. That was the armor school right there, the disheveled building.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
But we're able to recapitalize a lot of the space here. Off to your front, you see probably somewhere in the order of 1,500, 2,000. Those are soldiers against that hillside there.
Wow.
And they are conducting battle drills, react to IEDs, react to ambushes, things like that.
Mm-hmm. It's almost sort of Napoleonic in terms of squares of soldiers on them.
Exactly.
But they stay organized.
It's like a game of Risk.
Yeah.
That's me and Lieutenant Colonel Mike Lowe's at the Kabul Military Training Center, as well as Brigadier David Patterson from NATO. All 22,000 acres of that military training center. Many of those acres littered with dead Soviet tanks, as you can see here. In fact, there are so many dead Soviet tanks on this training ground that they use heavy equipment to move them around, to make them into boundaries for various training grounds. The fact that the Soviets used this spot for military training, and the British before them used that spot for military training, and now we're using it for military training, is a bracing little reminder that we are not the first empire to try to swagger or stalk or slog through Afghanistan. That said, some of the way we are slogging through is very 21st century. Take, for example, efforts to counter the legendary corruption among Afghan security forces. There's no real banking system for everyday Afghans, so traditionally, if you want to pay an Afghan soldier, you pay his commanding officer in cash. Then the commanding officer doles out whatever cash he thinks that soldier should get. Totally ripe for corruption, right? Soldiers don't know what exactly they're entitled to, and commanders take whatever they can get away with. To get around that, the NATO training mission in Afghanistan has started paying soldiers by cell phone. Although there isn't a robust banking system and literacy is not great, just about every soldier can be counted on to have a mobile phone. So when payday comes now, Afghan soldiers get sent on their phone a message containing the amount they're due to be paid and a code. They then take that to a mobile phone shop, and the shop gives them their pay. The idea is to standardize and professionalize the military and cut commanding officers out of an opportunity to steal from their troops. The corrupt commanding officers, though, have adapted as well. Rather than just directly stealing cash from their soldiers on payday like they used to, now they've started stealing their soldiers' SIM cards out of their phones on payday to try to steal from them that way. Another anti-corruption measure by the NATO training mission concerns gasoline. According to British Colonel Stuart Cohen, when NATO realized that fuel for Afghan police and army vehicles was being pilfered, being stolen, they came up with a solution straight out of a bank heist movie. They started dyeing all their gasoline blue. They literally call it Operation Blue Dye. They say that by dyeing all their gasoline blue and thereby discouraging stealing it by making it very obvious when it's been stolen, they've cut their fuel costs by 10%. So some of what's going on at this ancient place where foreign armies have always tried to train up local forces is new. Some of it is downright brand new, like training female recruits. These Afghan women are training to be police officers. There are also women training to be part of the Afghan National Army at this site. When I was in southern Afghanistan at a checkpoint between Kandahar City and the Arghandab district, I saw some confusion and some concern on site when a U.S. company commander reported that male Afghan police officers were able to search women, female Afghan civilians coming through the checkpoint. The U.S. officer said culturally the officers were able to do it as long as they didn't actually lay hands on the women. They'd instead just used metal detectors. A few moments later, though, Afghan policemen at that checkpoint themselves clarified that actually they weren't searching women civilians at all, that they wouldn't even consider doing that without female Afghan officers available to conduct the searches. So the need for female officers is definitely there. But you can imagine the incredible obstacles and taboos that Afghan women have to get through in order to do this kind of work. May I ask specifically, it's striking to me after having been in Afghanistan for just a few days now to see something like this where half the line is female and half the line is male. Are there cultural issues, cultural resistance issues with having women out here on the firing line? Yes.
It's not a big problem right now, because the problem, when we have the possibility, we book two different range.
Yeah.
One for men and one for women. But right now we have the basic training at the CTC, and every day we have 120 students, plus more or less 20 women.
Yeah.
Plus some other training that ongoing, they are coming, and this is a problem.
Yeah.
But we asked also to the management of CTC and for the Afghan side, also we asked there are no problem just to stay in the same line to shoot.
I think you've hit on a serious issue here, and it's the readiness of Afghan society to accept women in traditional roles that have always been those played by men. But the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Defense are both pushing this very hard. In the Ministry of Interior, they're going to grow 5,000 new police, patrolmen, NCOs, and officers over the next 5 years, and they're vitally required in the communities for family violence. They're required at border checkpoints for searches, but also to socialize the force to more accurately reflect the way the society is going.
Even just being out on the checkpoints that I saw in southern Afghanistan, they're already feeling the need for women to be able to search people going through checkpoints. I mean,
That's right.
You can't have men do it.
And in some of the force structuring that we've done with the Afghans this year, we've pushed the insertion of women much further ahead than we would have done otherwise. But it's a big program, and there's some societal challenges to training women. The ability of a woman to stay for a long period of time in a training institution. Married women with children actually are the predominant part of the population that come out here, and it's very hard for them to leave their families to train.
Sure.
But they are very mature policemen when they graduate, and so they really add to the professionalization of the force.
That's me with an Italian Carabinieri officer and Major General Mike Ward. He's Canadian. He's in charge of training the Afghan police for NATO. The top American in charge of training up the police is Brigadier General Ann McDonald, who in this context it was kind of amazing to meet. Here she is, the Deputy Commanding General for Police Development, overseeing Afghan women training to become officers. And General McDonald herself was in the first graduating class at West Point that included American women. In reading your bio, doesn't say this, but I did the math. And as far as I can tell, you were in the first. You graduated from West Point in 1980, which was the first year that West Point graduated female cadets.
That's
is that
correct.
Right?
That's correct.
Thank you for being a pioneer in that regard.
Cool.
But B, I wonder if you see some of your own career reflected in those young female police recruits we saw out on the range today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other day I had a chance to go to the officer candidate school, and I looked at these young women, and 1,001 thoughts went through my head, and I said, wow, that's where I was. And I used the expression that they are making the first footprints in the snow. And it's amazing how excited they are, what a great opportunity they have now, and some of them may not even realize it, that someone has opened the door for them. And now is their chance to be and to learn. And yeah, absolutely.
And
I look
open the door for more people behind them.
Absolutely. And I think it's such a wonderful thing. And because of that, I feel humbled to be able to even speak to them and talk to them and say, any kind of motivating word I can say that will encourage them to stay committed to what they're doing.
Male and female Afghan civilians are willing to take on the risk of signing up for the police or the army for a lot of different reasons. One of the most interesting reasons I found is because joining up is actually a fairly good opportunity to learn to read. That, plus why it matters what kind of gun that is that I'm holding very awkwardly there, will be on tomorrow's show. We'll be right back.